We ran a ballistics check on the pistol your mother found in your possession, and guess what we discovered, Sean?
Your gun's ballistics matches the weapon that killed one Frederick Williams.
Will we finally get answers as to what's happened with Sean, famous Figueroa? This has been one huge mystery for a while. There's been no famous in any of the trailers, there's been no media work that's been done by Antonio Ortiz. He's posted nothing on social media about Raising Kanan Season 4, apart from one scene that we've seen in a particular teaser that was posted by Raising Kanan stars on Instagram that does show someone that does resemble Famous, with a gun pointed towards his back. Is this Famous? What's going on with Famous's character, and will we see him or get some answers in episode 2? That's the topic of discussion in today's breakdown. We're going to be running through everything from him being picked up by law enforcement, all the way down to Jessica Figueroa's return, and whether she could actually have a hand in what happened with Famous. We are also going to be taking a look at a few other scenarios in terms of, is the showrunner and the writers playing a bigger game? For example, just like they did with Joey Badass's exit interview back in 305, they really are becoming a lot more savvy in terms of keeping us as the audience on our toes, keeping us guessing, and keeping things unpredictable. So that's definitely something we have to consider, but we're definitely going to touch on that a bit later on. But let's take it back a step and revisit exactly what happened with his character, not just towards the end of Season 3, but also what he did with Freddy towards the end of Season 2, because I do want to touch on the topic of how Freddy really messed him up in Season 3, but also how he could potentially even play a role in what happens with Famous going forward. Now in Season 2, Episode 6, Freddy stopped Kanan and Famous where him and his boys took a bag of cash off them. They did later get it back after Kanan beat the living breaks out of Freddy. On their way out, with the police rolling up on them, Kanan escaped, but Famous got thrown into a holding cell. Fast forward a few episodes, we did see Famous going over to Palomar and Corinne's, where he took their gun, which he said he wanted for protection. Really, he wanted to tax Freddy just like he did with them earlier on, because Famous's rent was due. He was about to be kicked out of his apartment, and he couldn't pay up. Now things took a turn when Freddy reached for his piece. Famous took a few shots, and down went Freddy. It definitely wasn't Famous's intention to kill Freddy there and then, but when Freddy reached for his piece, it was either going to be him or Famous. Now Season 3 is when we really began to see the murder really start playing on Famous's mind. He went from just rapping about murders and what happens in the streets to actually being in the thick of it himself. In 305, he was picked up by the apartments, where Garcia did press him about the murder of Freddy. They had an incident report placing him at the scene of the crime, but they never really had any solid evidence to go on. However, the evidence finally came in terms of the murder weapon. He stupidly hid the murder weapon in his bedroom. His moms later found the gun and handed it into the police, and guess what? It was tied to the murder of Freddy. He was then arrested and pressed by Detective Garcia, Captain Baptiste, and also Agent Tanner. So that's the long story short in terms of where we are with Famous's character at this moment in time. Now we do know law enforcement are always going to be playing a big role in any power show. Whether they get wins or not, we have seen a few over the past few years. They are definitely rare wins, but we have seen one or two. Now in the 402 trailer, we've got Captain Baptiste telling Garcia, press upon any of his informants, and is one of them Famous? We do know he will be pressing upon Kanan, and there's also a scene of him walking with Jukebox. Although, on this one with Jukebox, this has to be a bit later on, because we know Juke is in the army in 402, but is one of his informants Famous? It really wasn't looking good for him in 310, it really wasn't. The problem he had was, law enforcement weren't interested in small fish like Famous. I said it before in one of my previous breakdowns, for law enforcement, they really couldn't care less that Famous killed Freddy. In their eyes, they're probably thinking, that's one less thug off the streets. Garcia, Agent Tanner, and Captain Baptiste, they're looking at the big fish in terms of Rock, the Thomases, even Stefano Marchetti, who was brought in for questioning earlier on in Season 3. They're looking at the head honchos, they're looking at the sharks, they don't care about small fish like Famous. But what they can definitely do is scare him with some major time. Does that get him talking? Does that get him cooperating with law enforcement? Now going into Season 4, we definitely question where is Famous, and I did briefly think after 401, could Jessica have come back to take Famous to LA with her, or did she come back to Queens to potentially help Famous? I did look at it from the timeline point of view and whether it was in and around when Famous was in trouble, but he didn't get arrested till 310, and we did figure out Jessica came back around the episode 7 or 8 mark. Jessica even said that her family didn't know she was in town. I mean, she could have been lying to Lou, but I don't think Jessica was here to help Famous. In my opinion, the timeline really doesn't match up for her to do so, but definitely just thought it was worth a mention. Now, one thing I can definitely see happening, which does make sense, is Freddy's people coming back for revenge. An eye for an eye. Maybe Kanan is at Famous's grave, Detective Howard's, potentially even his grandmother, Joyce Thomas's. It has to be one of the three. But what I really find strange about this whole Famous situation is there's been literally no word from Antonio Ortiz in terms of media work or anything, which did make me wonder prior to season 4, is he even going to be in this season? Is this even famous? Would they dare to have an off-screen death? I'm not too sure. I really don't believe they do that to us in terms of giving us an off-screen death. I think Sasha Penn and the writers are way better than that. The writing for Raising Kanan so far has been phenomenal, and I don't see them ruining it by giving us an off-screen death for Famous, either in season 4 or 5. So I do trust whatever plan they have got something up their sleeve. And with that in mind, there is something I do want to discuss in a bit more detail. Sasha Penn and Joey Badass played a huge chess game with the audience last year. After episode 305, when Unique was supposedly killed off, they had an entire exit interview planned. They also posted their goodbyes for Unique's character all over social media. In the interviews, they confirmed, yeah, the character is definitely dead. He's not coming back. Joey Badass had other commitments in terms of music and a music tour, only to hit us right at the end of 310. Unique is back. So could they be playing a bigger game with Sean Famous Figueroa? Are they keeping us on our toes, not trying to give too much away too soon? It definitely is something worth keeping in mind. Are they playing a game with the audience? Now, what I tend to do with these breakdowns, I always revisit the history in terms of what they've done before. As I like to mention, I call it the evidence, facts, and findings, and I really do believe it is a card they could play again in the future. It may not be with this particular situation, but it definitely is something to keep in mind. They are becoming a lot more savvy in terms of keeping us guessing. So, could they really be playing mind games? Now, in my honest opinion, I do think this is Famous. We've got someone with a gun to fame with a silencer, and it really is difficult to see who it is. They've blurred him out. However, based on this ring here, it does look like this particular ring belongs to Marvin, and we know Marvin hates snitches. The problem I have with Famous being a snitch, or if they make him a confidential informant, would Kanan really name his son after a snitch? I personally don't think he would, but let's wait and see. Either way, it really is looking grim for Famous. I'm just hoping we get answers in season 4, which I do think we will based on this. But I just find everything to be really kind of strange in terms of Antonio Ortiz not doing any kind of media work and not posting anything about Raising Kanan season 4. And I really do wonder, are they playing a huge game like they've done before, with how Joey Badass and Sasha Penn did those interviews after 305? It is something I've been wondering for a while, and I really can't put my finger on it, which does actually make this situation and this season even more fun. They really have made it unpredictable. But that's where we're going to leave it for Famous heading into season 4, episode 2. Let's hope we do begin to get a few answers. Hopefully it's not something they keep a mystery going into season 5, because that really would be a pain. But drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section and let me know what you think of this Famous situation. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.